Hey guys, before we get onto this top 15 Batman comic book storylines list, I would like to state that I love all of these Batman storylines equally. They're not all better than each other, I like them all the same. So just keep that in mind when I read out the list. Well, I'm mainly saying this just so I don't get any negative comments. Batman has had some arguably very iconic comic book storylines all across his 80 years of comic book history. And with the Batman film obviously coming out next year, because I probably haven't done any videos on it, I thought, well, I've done a list on Batman storylines that should be adapted into film. I thought, why not do a list of my favourite Batman storylines? Now, before we go on, I'm going to need to issue a few rules. Sorry, Flashpoint, Tower of Babel, and Forever Evil. Number 3, I am including post-crisis and New 52 storylines, so that's also to avoid any confusion with the timelines. Damn you, Flashpoint. I'm not going to be including Rebirth or pre-crisis because I couldn't find many interesting storylines there. Okay, coming in at number 15 is Nightfall. Now, Nightfall is probably one of the most iconic Batman comics because for the first time Batman does actually lose. Well, he loses a fight. The reason this is one of the more iconic Batman comic book storylines is because, well, you're seeing it on your screen now, Bane actually breaks Batman's back, and this was, well, it was absolute genius during the 90s because there were so many Batman storylines coming out in the 90s, and this one, in my opinion, actually takes the cake, even though I wasn't born during the 90s. I wish I was, though. I do. I do wish I was born in the 90s. Anyway, Nightfall is a fantastic storyline because it's got great writing, and for the first time, Batman does actually lose. I've already mentioned that. So that's why I placed Nightfall here on the list. And remember what I said before, I like all the storylines equally, so it's just in the order that I like them. I love all of them equally, I can't stress that enough. Okay, my next pick is Batman Inc. Death of Robin. This is a new 52 storyline, so you probably don't recognize it now. So this storyline follows Bruce Wayne, now back as Batman after the whole Battle of the Cowl incident with Jason Todd, and he set up Batman Incorporated with a Batman in each part of the world. And there's a Japanese Batman, a Swedish Batman, a Spanish Batman, a French Batman. There's probably a Batman in every single part of the country. In every single country across the world, there's probably a Batman there in the comic. And there's also the return of Kate Kane, the original Batwoman, who you probably haven't heard of now because Crisis on Infinite Earths and the Batwoman show and the Arrowverse. Excuse me. Anyway, I like this storyline because it's actually the second time Robin dies. Granted, it is a different version of Robin, but it's the second version of a very iconic comic book death. So there are actually two Robins in New 52 canon that actually died. Jason Todd, he was killed by the Joker famously, and in the New 52 continuity he was brought back to life by Talia al Ghul. Damian Wayne, he of course died, and he was brought back to life, though we'll get back to how he was brought back a little later on. Anyway, Batman Inc. is a really, really good storyline, and not to mention, Talia al Ghul is actually a really good villain. I used to think that Talia was more of an anti-hero, mainly because of Batman Arkham City, but after looking up Batman Inc., she is definitely a very much more compelling villain than her own father. Okay, another New 52 storyline, Batman Court of Owls and Night of the Owls. I suspect because they're a two-parter, I decided to put them both together. So this follows a sinister organisation called the Court of the Owls, who basically are like DC's version of the Illuminati. I hope the Illuminati aren't actually watching this, that would be a bit weird and very creepy. Anyway, The Court of Owls is a very, very good storyline that I would highly recommend you actually read, because it's probably the best Batman storyline in the New 52, in my opinion. Because you get to see both sides of Batman and Bruce Wayne, and not to mention there's conspiracy involving Thomas Wayne Jr., I just said that in quotes, who was actually Bruce Wayne's friend in the New 52, Lincoln March. However, it's revealed that that's not the case in the comics. Another reason I like this comic is because Batman dons the most badass mech suit ever, the Thrasher armor. It's made of meta-aramid fibers, stronger than Kevlar, and it fires cryogenic batarangs. Please tell me Batman got those from Mr. Freeze. Assuming Mr. Freeze is a good guy in the New 52. Anyway, overall, Court of the Owls and Night of the Owls are great storylines in general, and I hope they pop up in Rebirth. I haven't read any Rebirth comics, so if they have popped up in Rebirth, just let me know in the comments. Okay, another New 52 storyline. I'm sorry this is a bit New 52 heavy, but we have got some other original comic stories sprinkled in. So this New 52 storyline tells the story of how Batman goes to Apokolips and brings back the corpse of Robin. So if you read Batman Incorporated, you'll know that Damian Wayne and Talia al Ghul both died in that comic, and Batman's main mission is to actually go and rescue Robin's body. I don't know exactly what happened to Talia's body. I'm assuming that she also got taken. However, the bodies were originally taken by Ra's al Ghul in the comic. At the beginning of Robin Rises, Batman is fighting Ra's al Ghul, who has taken possession of both Talia and Damian's bodies. Ra's original plan was to resurrect Damian and Talia and erase any memory of Batman from their minds. However, a servant of Darkseid, who I can't remember, actually takes the corpse of Damian to Apokolips, and Batman dons what is arguably the most metal batsuit ever. I mean, have you seen this thing? I mean, I'm surprised I don't have a suit like that. It's so cool. And I'm going to do possibly a top 10 Batsuits redo video at this point. So this storyline is really good, mainly because it also gives Damian Wayne superpowers and brings back the second Robin. And when I say second, I mean they resurrected the second Robin who actually died. Of course, Jason Todd died and Damian died, and they both got resurrected. So that's basically what I meant by that. Robin Rises is a fantastic storyline. Okay, now we're going to move on to A Death in the Family. Now, this is probably another one of the most iconic Batman storylines. Similar to Nightfall, Batman does actually lose here as well. I know I mentioned that Nightfall was the first time Batman kind of lost, but that's when he was fighting. This is probably one of the biggest losses Batman has suffered, and that is saying something, because the year before this comic came out, Barbara Gordon had just been shot by the Joker, and she was in a wheelchair. And Jason Todd's death is so dark. And not to mention that people who actually read Death in the Family back then actually had the choice to either kill Robin or let him live. So that's right, those of you who voted for Robin to die, you're responsible for this. And it's still an iconic storyline. Jason Todd's death was actually permanent. However, it wasn't permanent until a few years later when Superboy Prime punched the fabric of reality, and Jason Todd was brought back to life in another storyline. Okay, my next pick is Batman Year One. Now, this gives us a darker retelling of Bruce Wayne's origins and his journey to actually becoming Batman. Now, I bet you think, oh, Batman's just a bat creature. He's just really skilled. We actually learn how Batman gained those skills. Now, we do learn that Batman's origin was really, really dark. Now, back when we first heard of Batman, we did learn that Batman's parents were actually gunned down, but now we get an even more darker retelling. With Batman's parents dying, Gotham falls into chaos, and the death of Batman's parents also causes Bruce, something inside of him, to snap. And Bruce dedicates his life to finding the killer of his parents and bringing other criminals to justice. And this is basically the foundations of the storyline for Batman Year One. And I want to say the Batman Year 1 suit is actually really good. And while it has probably the more iconic look of a Batsuit, and I believe this is actually the inspiration for the Telltale Batsuit, at least in the first season, because it had the small ears, and the sort of grey look with the black gauntlets. While the Telltale suit was a bit more armoured, I now understand where they got the inspiration from. Okay, returning to the New 52, we're going to talk about Batman Zero Year. Now, this is basically a New 52 retelling of Batman Year 1. However, it's called Zero Year, and it tells us how Bruce Wayne came to be Batman in the New 52. Now, this shows us the origins, well, a new different retelling of origins of certain characters, and introduces us to some different characters. For example, we're introduced to Philip Kane, who was Bruce Wayne's uncle in the New 52. He didn't exist before the New 52 happened. Thank you, Flashpoint, for the better storylines. And Zero Year is a really cool story because it tells us of how Bruce Wayne originally became Batman in the New 52. And I gotta say, I really like the New 52 look for Zero Year Batman. It's like a modernized version of the original Detective Comics Batsuit, and that is an iconic Batsuit in its own right. But I want to say this is a way better Batsuit than the one in Detective Comics. Anyway, this also shows us the origins of two of Batman's iconic villains, Joker and the Riddler. Well, the Riddler is one of my least favourite Batman villains because of the atrocious collecting of trophies during the whole Arkham game saga and the data packs in Arkham Origins. Riddler is still a good Batman villain. I apologise that I keep hating on Riddler because of the whole Arkham games thing. But still, Riddler is a good villain in his own right, and we also get to see a retelling of the Joker's origins. Now, by this point we know the Joker's origin, at least that's what we think we knew, because it's said that Joker fell into a vat of chemicals and Batman was involved. However, we get a retelling in the New 52 that Joker was a mob boss called the Red Hood who fell into a vat of chemicals. That's mainly the most accepted version of the Joker's origin. And I love it. So that's basically what I thought of it. Okay, so another storyline I'm going to talk about is The Long Halloween. And you may recognise the storyline because we actually adapted it sort of on the Crafting Bros channel. So you can go check that out if you want. I might put a link in the description. I don't know at the time of the recording. So this storyline centers around Batman, Commissioner Gordon, and Harvey Dent, pre-Two-Face, working together to get rid of the crime families in Gotham. The secondary story also focuses on the Holiday Killer, who was killing people on major holidays. Among those victims is some members of the Falcone crime family, and the Maronis as well. So another part of The Long Halloween also centers around a gang war between Gotham's crime families, and the attempts to actually stop it. And I have to say, it's a really good storyline, because I actually had to, of course, research it when I adapted The Long Halloween on the channel. And I have to admit, it's a great storyline, and this also gives us a bit more backstory on Catwoman, because it's revealed that Catwoman is actually Carmine Falcone's daughter, somehow. And this also shows us the origins of Two-Face. Now, I always make out that Two-Face is my favourite Batman villain, but he is one of my favourite Batman villains. He's not my main favourite villain, but he is definitely up there. Anyway, The Long Halloween is great because it's set during Batman's early years of crime fighting. He does have the established relationship with the police, however, he's got a blue suit by this point, and he's got the long ears on the cowl. And while Robin doesn't actually appear in this one, I made the decision to actually put Robin in my version of The Long Halloween. Anyway, Long Halloween in general, it's such a great storyline. Okay, my next pick is The Killing Joke, and this is definitely the darkest Batman storyline, well, post-Crisis at least. So this is mainly my favourite Batman storyline in the post-Crisis part, before the New 52 retconned everything. Mainly because it's got what's mainly accepted by most Batman fans as the Joker's true origin. And I have to say, the Joker's origin in this is very, very dark. And no wonder the Joker actually went insane, because his pregnant wife died. The Joker's pregnant wife actually died, and the Joker, well, before becoming Joker, was actually a failing stand-up comedian, and that fits the Joker perfectly. And the fact that it's actually Batman who creates Joker unknowingly is what's probably one of the biggest twists in comic book history in terms of Batman storylines. And I really love the storyline, mainly because it's got another iconic moment, Barbara Gordon getting shot. I know I shouldn't really make out this given all the mass shootings in America, and it doesn't exactly age well, I don't think. But still, the storyline is great in its own right. And as the Joker says, just one bad day can make one man go insane. That's basically my impression of trying to do the Mark Hamill Joker. Anyway, The Killing Joke is a fantastic storyline. Okay, now we're going to talk about the follow-up to A Death in the Family, Under the Red Hood. So I'm just going to quickly explain how exactly in detail Jason Todd got brought back to life. So there's a storyline called Infinite Crisis, and there's a character called Superboy Prime who ends up punching the fabric of reality, which actually brings Jason Todd back to life. Now, similar to the New 52, Jason Todd is actually brought back to life via the Lazarus Pit, which is actually how he comes back in the New 52 as well as the Under the Red Hood animated film as well as this. And I really, really love this storyline, mainly because of the inner conflicts between Batman and his desire to find out who the Red Hood actually is. And the reveal that it's actually Jason Todd is really, really cool. And the fact that Red Hood is actually pissed at Batman for not killing the Joker was a really cool concept. And there's actually there was actually an alternate dimension, alternate Earth if you will, where Batman did actually kill the Joker after the death of Jason Todd and proceeded to kill all his other villains. Yes, I remember that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Hush, and it's a very popular Batman storyline for a lot of people. It has actually been adapted into an animated film, which I probably need to watch and make a review on. But that's not really important right now. So, Hush, the comic story, centers around a bandaged man called, well, Hush, who puts together a lot of Batman's villains into one master plan. That's how a comic historian described it. So, almost every Batman villain is involved in this. Not the obscure ones like Kite Man and Polka Dot Man, or even Condiment King. God. It includes some of the more popular Batman villains, so Joker, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, Catwoman, Huntress and Robin. I know they're not villains, but they make an appearance. Talia al Ghul makes an appearance too, along with Ra's al Ghul, I believe, at one point. And then there's also the appearance of the Riddler, where the big twist is that he is actually the one who came up with all this, because he's the one who actually figured out who Batman really is. And the fact that it was the Riddler, it seems pretty interesting, though it takes away from the fact that Hush is sort of the main villain. But Hush, on his own, is a very compelling character, and he's actually rooted in Batman's origins too. So, as a child, Bruce Wayne had a childhood friend called Tommy Elliot, who would later become Hush. And his origin is actually quite interesting, because Bruce's parents actually died when they were shot in Crime Alley. Thomas Elliot wanted to kill his parents so he could get his rightful inheritance. However, Thomas Elliot decided to do this before Bruce Wayne's parents were killed. And the result wasn't good, for him at least. So the good news for Tommy at least was that his father had died in the car crash. However, the bad news for Tommy was that his mother survived, so he couldn't get his inheritance. So, yeah, boo-hoo for him. Anyway, it has just such a fantastic storyline, and it ties together so many Batman villains, and that's what I like about it. Okay, now we're going to move on to Batman Heart of Ice. Now, this is quite an interesting story, because it actually gives us the origins of one of my favourite Batman villains, Mr. Freeze. Now, if you don't know the origins of Mr. Freeze, I will go over it. So, Victor Freeze was a scientist working at Gothcorp Labs. However, his wife was diagnosed with an incurable disease. Victor, being a very successful cryogenicist, put his wife into cryostasis in order to keep her stable for long enough for Victor to find a cure for Nora's incurable disease. In Arkham Origins, it was described that Nora had Huntington's chorea. And because Victor was doing this sort of on the side, he made a deal with Gothcorp CEO Ferris Boyle to help find a cure for Nora's incurable disease. However, Ferris was actually more interested in how Victor had managed to put Nora into cryostasis. When Victor discovered that Ferris had no intention of following up on the deal, he decided to do the disease research himself. And while the result of Victor's choice didn't end well, Ferris and some of his men came in, attacked him, and took his wife. To keep in mind, she was in the cryo chamber, and so there was this cryochemical cocktail sort of thing that altered Victor's metabolism. In Arkham Origins Cold Heart DLC, it's described that Victor was not alone in his origin, that there was a security guard in the same room. When Ferris actually escaped, yes, he unfortunately escaped, he had Victor's lab quarantined to keep any of the cryostasis materials from leaking and causing a mass incident at Gothcorp. In Arkham Origins, Ferris went on to win Humanitarian of the Year. Yeah. Anyway, I really like Mr. Freeze's origin because it's so tragic and he's just trying to save his dying wife, and that's really what I like about him. And plus, Mr. Freeze is a great character, and I hope he's the one that ends up being played by Peter Capaldi in the Suicide Squad film next year. Okay, my next story I'm going to pick is Batman Endgame. Now, we're returning back to the New 52 material for this. So, this story centers around the Joker. Now, a lot of people thought that Joker had actually perished in Death of the Family because he had fallen off a cliff in that story. However, we'll be getting to Death of the Family in possibly another video. So, the one thing I like about Batman Endgame is because of the beginning of the story. Batman has to fight off the Justice League. The Justice League. Joker managed to hypnotize the Justice League with his toxin. That's the biggest feat any Batman villain's ever accomplished. And for another thing, I really like Joker's design. I mean, it's not what we're used to. I mean, in Death of the Family, he cut his face off haphazardly with Dollmaker involved, and then he strapped it back to his own face. What's the goddamn point in that? Sorry, we're not on Death of the Family now anyway. Anyway, the main takeaway from this is because Batman has the coolest mech suit out of any of his comics. The Justice Buster suit. I put this in second place next to the Thrasher suit from Court of the Owls. It's such a cool suit because it's got protocols built in for the entire Justice League, and that does definitely seem like something Batman would actually do. And I really like all the security protocols, the frictionless coding for the Flash, the electromagnetic tree for Cyborg, despite the fact we never actually got to see that in the comic. And there's the citrine neutralizer for Green Lantern, and we didn't see that in the comic. There were all these interesting things that we got to see for the Justice Buster, and it was just really, really cool. Anyway, let's move on to our number 2 pick. Okay, now we're going to talk about Batman Night Avengers. Now, this is one of my favourite comic book stories, mainly because that Batman isn't actually Bruce Wayne in this. It's actually Thomas Wayne who became Batman. So I'm just going to provide a bit of backstory. So this is set in the Flashpoint timeline. And if you don't know what the Flashpoint comic is, then you haven't paid a bit of attention to the channel because we kind of did an adaptation of it. So Night of Vengeance takes place in the Flashpoint timeline and follows the Batman of this universe, Thomas Wayne. So in this timeline, Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne didn't actually die in Crime Alley. Instead, it was the other way around, and Bruce Wayne died in that alley on the fateful night that Bruce would have become Batman. So what happened to Thomas and Martha, I hear you ask? Well, Thomas, wanting to avenge the death of his son, beat Joe Chill to a bloody pulp and became the new Batman. What happened to Martha Wayne, I hear you ask? Well, let's just say she went down a path of insanity and became the Joker. And a lot of people have been clamouring to see Jeffrey Dean Morgan take on the role of Thomas Wayne Batman because of his appearance in Dawn of Justice playing Thomas Wayne. Sadly, I don't think we'll get to see that because while the Flash film is adapting Flashpoint, I doubt we'll be able to see maybe even Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Thomas Wayne Batman because he apparently wants to play Lobo, which is still a good idea. So anyway, the reason this comic is so cool is because it gives us a new layer of context on this version of the Batman character, because most of Thomas Wayne's known associates know that he's Batman, Oswald Cobblepot included. Yes, I know a lot of people see Penguin as sort of the bad guy to Batman, but in the Night of Vengeance comic, Penguin is actually one of Thomas Wayne's allies. And Thomas Wayne is actually trying to keep the Falcone kids out of his casino. Yes, he owns a casino, not the one from GTA 5. That joke was for a friend of mine. Anyway, Night of Vengeance is a fantastic story in general, and I love it. Okay, now we're going to move on to probably the darkest Batman comic in the New 52 continuity, Death of the Family. Now, I'm going to provide a bit of backstory on this, as I did with some of the others. So, this story follows the Joker, having been missing for a year since he cut his own face off in Arkham Asylum. Jesus, that's brutal. Sorry, that's still a bit dark in my mind for me. I don't like to think about it. Anyway, Death of the Family follows Joker trying to rid Batman of his distractions. I put that in quotes. So he's trying to get rid of the Bat family. So he's trying to kill Nightwing, Red Hood again, Tim Drake, Red Robin, Batgirl, and Damian Wayne. And not to mention, he also poisons all of them at the end with Joker toxin. And god damn you, Joker. One of the darkest things about this comic is the fact that the Joker is at his most brutal here. And I don't know what else I can say, because the Joker is so dark in this story. I mean, there's a shot in it at the beginning of the comic where Commissioner Gordon's looking down the hallway and he sees a guy who he sort of recognises, and guess what? It's the Joker with his face sewn on haphazardly. Well, when I say haphazardly, I mean he's just got it strapped to his face. He hasn't sewn it back on. And the end of the comic is brutal as well, because the Joker tricks Batman and the Bat family to make them think that they're supposed to eat their own faces. I cannot tell you how dark that actually is. Why, oh why, did Joker have to be this brutal? Here's my answer. It's the New 52. This is a new version of the Joker character. He's meant to be this brutal. However, Joker didn't have a big presence in the New 52 after Batman Endgame, because he was actually believed to be dead. However, Death of the Family and Batman Endgame led to the origins of Joker's daughter, who apparently is also a very dark character, and thinks she is actually the Joker's daughter. Sounds like somebody's got daddy issues. Okay, so that was my video on my top 15 Batman comic book storylines. Did you make it to the end of this video? If so, I am actually impressed. So, I want you guys to tell me, who was your favourite Batman? Did you like Bruce Wayne Batman? Did you like Dick Grayson from Battle for the Cow? Did you like perhaps a Batman from another universe? Alas, maybe, did you like Flashpoint Batman? Did you like Dick Grayson when he was Batman in Battle for the Cow? Second time I said that. Which era of Batman did you like? Did you like, maybe the early Detective Comics Batman? Did you like the 60s Batman? Can be Adam West. Did you like 70s Batman? Did you like Frank Miller's Batman? Did you like A Death in the Family Batman because he became so much more brutal? Did you like Nightfall Batman? John Paul Valley Batman? Look, just tell me what you thought in the comments below, and I may be making another top 10 Batsuits video. I'm not sure about it yet, but I'm just saying it now. Anyway, thanks for watching and I'll see you soon.